Your attention span isn't broken, it's under attack. While samurai warriors spent centuries perfecting the art of undivided focus, you're fighting a battle against technology designed to fragment your mind. What if the ancient code that made these warriors legendary could unlock your peak performance today? The answer might surprise you. Keep watching to discover how a medieval warrior's mindset becomes your secret weapon in the modern world. How medieval warriors built mental fortresses. While you're losing focus, think about the last time you tried to concentrate on something genuinely important. Probably didn't last long, right? Meanwhile, a samurai could maintain razor-sharp focus for hours in life or death situations without a single distraction. The difference wasn't genetics. It wasn't motivation. It was something far more tactical and intentional. The samurai didn't leave focus to chance or hope. They engineered it systematically. They understood something modern neuroscience is just now catching up to. Your brain has a focus muscle, and like any muscle, it gets stronger with consistent training. But here's what most people miss: they think the training is about resisting distractions. Wrong. It's about restructuring how your brain processes reality at a fundamental level. When a samurai walked into battle, his brain was operating in a completely different mode than yours is right now. He had spent years training in something called Zanshin, the principle of absolute presence and awareness. It means your consciousness stays locked on what matters, and everything else literally becomes invisible to your nervous system. Not mentally invisible, neurologically invisible through actual brain restructuring. Here's the wild part. Your brain is already doing this filtering right now. Even though there are thousands of visual stimuli in your immediate environment, you're only consciously aware of a tiny fraction. Your brain is constantly filtering information. The samurai mastered the art of controlling that filter deliberately. They weren't stronger than distractions, they had reprogrammed what their brain considered worth filtering for. Modern productivity experts call this selective attention. Samurais just called it survival. And the training method they used is something you can implement immediately, even if you've never trained a day in your life. It doesn't require meditation. It doesn't require a dojo, but it does require understanding one fundamental principle that separates peak performers from those who constantly feel scattered and overwhelmed. The warrior code. Nobody talks about the architecture of unbreakable focus. Most people approach focus all wrong. They think it's about willpower and motivation. But a samurai knew better from experience. Willpower is finite. It burns out quickly. It's unreliable. What you actually need is what I call structural focus, systems so bulletproof that focus becomes the default, not the rare exception. The samurai had a concept called Riai, the principle of integrated strategy. It meant that every aspect of your life, from how you dress to how you eat to how you train, served one overarching objective. You weren't fighting distractions throughout your day. You had eliminated the possibility of distraction before the day even started. This is foundational thinking. This is why so many successful people today, elite athletes, Fortune 500 CEOs, accomplished scientists, follow extremely rigid routines and protocols. They're unconsciously recreating what samurai figured out centuries ago through trial and error. When your environment is designed, when your choices are predetermined, when your day has clear structure, your brain conserves critical mental energy. You're not constantly deciding, you're executing. But here's where it gets interesting and powerful. The samurai didn't just use external structure alone. They developed an internal filter called joriki, what we'd call mental discipline or directedness. It's the ability to direct your attention with such precision that your mind doesn't wander automatically. It's like developing a spotlight instead of a flashlight that bounces everywhere randomly. The training was counterintuitive and brilliant. They didn't practice by trying harder. They practiced by training their nervous system to become comfortable with discomfort, with stillness, with boredom, with simplicity. A samurai would sit in meditation, and the moment their mind wandered, they'd acknowledge it without judgment and return focus. This wasn't Zen mysticism. This was applied neuroscience disguised as philosophy. When you meditate consistently, even for 5 minutes daily, you're literally rewiring your prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for focus and executive function. Brain imaging shows measurable structural changes in just 8 weeks. But the samurai were doing this 800 years ago, with no science to back it up, just observable results that worked. Why your brain is being hacked and how to become unhackable. Let's be direct and honest. The technology you use every day was engineered by some of the smartest minds on the planet to capture your attention and keep it. Not because they're evil people, but because your attention is worth billions of dollars annually. When you click, when you linger, when you engage with content, data gets collected, algorithms improve, and advertisements get more targeted and effective. You're not fighting weakness or personal failure. You're fighting an entire industry specifically designed by behavioral psychologists, neuroscientists, and software engineers whose sole job is to make your attention their product. This is by design. The samurai faced a simpler enemy: direct physical threats. But the principle was identical and universal. You need a defense mechanism. The samurai's defense wasn't force, it was awareness. They called it the principle of perceiving empty space, of noticing what's absent as much as what's present. They understood that threats hide in what you're not paying attention to consciously. Applied to your modern life, this means something radical. You need to become aware of the invisible architecture trying to manipulate your focus. Every notification is a trigger designed by engineers. Every autoplay feature is a psychological hack. Every algorithmic feed is a manipulation of your natural impulses. Once you see it clearly, your brain can reject it strategically. Here's the neuroscience behind this. Your amygdala responds to novelty with primitive alarm reactions. Your dopamine system chases reward signals obsessively. These aren't personality flaws or weaknesses. They're ancient survival mechanisms hardwired deep. The samurai understood this without knowing the neuroscience terminology. They trained their prefrontal cortex, your conscious reasoning brain, to override these ancient impulses. They did this through something called kata, repetitive, ritualized practice. Every single day, they would practice the same movements, the same breathing, the same patterns deliberately. This seems boring, right? But that boredom is where the magic happens neurologically. When your brain gets bored, it starts to override impulse. When you voluntarily choose to do something repetitive and boring, you're strengthening your ability to resist automatic reactions and impulses. Building your personal warrior code starting this week. The samurai code wasn't abstract philosophy or theoretical. It was a tactical system, a practical protocol, and you can implement it starting today, right now, without any special equipment or exotic practices. That sound impossible. First, create your intention ritual. Every single morning, before you check your phone or start your day, spend 3 minutes in absolute silence and stillness. Ask yourself one question. What is the one outcome that matters today? That's it. Not 10 goals, not 5. One specific outcome. The samurai went into battle with one objective. That clarity becomes your filter. Everything else becomes noise your brain automatically filters out without effort. Second, implement environment design. The samurai controlled their physical space because they understood that environment shapes behavior fundamentally. You do the same strategically. Phone in another room during deep work. Notifications completely off. Browser tabs closed except what's needed. If you're fighting your environment, you've already lost. Design victory instead through environmental architecture. Third, build your micro-discipline habit. This is the core of the system. Pick one small thing: 5 minutes of meditation, 20 push-ups, journaling 3 sentences, and do it every single day at the same time. The samurai called this training commitment gamen, during hardship through patient persistence. You're not trying to transform overnight magically. You're building the neural pathways that make focus automatic through repetition. Fourth, practice strategic recovery. The samurai trained intensely, but they also understood rest deeply. High performers today do the same instinctively. Your focus isn't infinite. It's renewable through proper recovery. You recover through quality sleep, proper nutrition, and brief strategic disengagement. When you accept this biological reality, you stop fighting your nature. You work with it instead. Here's what actually happens when you implement this system. your brain stops treating distraction as temptation. It becomes incompatible with your identity. You're not someone who resists notifications. You're someone who's focused on something that matters deeply. The internal narrative changes, and suddenly, the external behavior transforms completely and naturally. The samurai warrior path wasn't easy, but it was simple. It's time to stop being fragmented and start being unstoppable. Your focus code is waiting. The real question is, will you activate it? Drop a comment telling me which of these strategies you're implementing first. Smash that like button, subscribe for more high-performance content that actually changes lives, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. There's much more warrior wisdom coming your way. This video is purely educational and based on historical interpretations of samurai philosophy and modern neuroscience research. These techniques are suggestions for personal development and do not replace professional mental health consultation. If you experience persistent focus difficulties, please consult a healthcare professional.